Good morning, campus. Good morning, Winnipeg. Hello, friends of CKUW. We want to welcome you this morning to Wooden Spoons. And it is CKUW 95.9 FM. And my name is Kristins. So happy to be joining here as a co-host for my first time with community nutritionist, Mary Jane Eason. And we're going to be discussing topics of healthy living, environmental issues, what's going on in our community, as well as other interests in this 1-hour show. On Wooden Spoons, we do recognize that all things are related. We are all related. And with learning and awareness, we connect the dots that make up our world. Every Friday morning on Wooden Spoons, we're going to be speaking with guests on relevant issues. We're going to be sharing nutritious recipes, exploring important topics with perspectives not found in the mainstream media. The time right now is just 4 minutes past 8. And I'll get the weather for you straight away. I'll tell you that it is raining a little bit outside, so be careful walking the streets and driving. It's a little slippery, but it's a beautiful day. Welcome to our guests, and welcome Mary Jane.
Well, good morning, Kristen. Thank you for braving the introduction, and for this is your first time, and it's great to have you on our show as our co-host. So our guests this morning are Andrea Shalay and Dave Nickarz. And Dave is, of course, well known to Winnipeggers for his activist role in the protection of the environment and public health, and more recently in his running in the past provincial election as a Green candidate for the Wolseley area. And Dave, along with his wife Laura Rawlick, of 14 years, has lived and worked in the Wolseley riding since 2003. He runs a small business specializing in renovating older homes and including making them more energy efficient. And Andrea Shalay lives in West Broadway, and both she and Dave are both on the board of West Broadway Community Organization, and both Andrea and Dave are members of the Green Party. Andrea is the Green Party of Canada candidate for Winnipeg Centre in the next federal election in 2019, and Dave Nickarz is the Green Party candidate for the Wolseley constituency, where he will be running for office in the next provincial election. And during the last provincial election in October 2015, Dave ran a very close race with incumbent Rob Altemeyer as the candidate for the Green Party in the Wolseley area. Andrea and Dave both went to Prince Edward Island, where they spent 8 days in Charlottetown during their provincial election, their by-election. And this was at the Parkdale by-election, which took place on November the 27th, on 2017. Hannah Bell was the candidate running, and she now joins Peter Bevan Baker as the second Green MLA in the Prince Edward Island legislature. And this morning we'll be talking to Andrea and Dave about their experiences and observations on the campaign and what, if any, lessons they have learned. And so we look forward to talking to you, and good morning and welcome to Wooden Spoons.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me again.
Yes. So maybe you could either of you could give us some information about the background to the by-election, and who were the candidates, and what were the results of the election.
I'll give a bit of context for what we were stepping into when we got out there. And there's many things about Prince Edward Island culture that were very much a factor in this. For one of the things that really amazed me about Prince Edward Island is that the people there are very active and informed in politics. And so the voter turnout tends to be one of the highest in the country. The other interesting fact about Prince Edward Islanders is that they have very strong party loyalty, often going back generations. So there's that sort of dynamic that's at play. What happened in one of the previous elections was the election of Peter Bevan Baker, who now sits on the legislature. He's the Green Party leader for the province there. He had a very strong win. And since he's been had held a seat, he's really raised the bar of how politics are done in that province. A lot of it based out of integrity and non-combativeness, and really holding his fellow MLAs to account. In about a year earlier, there was a plebiscite in the province on electoral reform. And one of the very strong indicators that came out of that plebiscite is that there was very strong support for electoral reform. However, the premier, the Liberal premier, basically just ignored the results. And that had a very big impact on people's perceptions of politics. So that was sort of the context that we were walking into and had to learn about in terms of getting a sense of when this by-election was called. This is where a lot of the people were at with politics. Peter Bevan Baker being the most popular MLA in the province. The plebiscite leaving a lot of people feeling like they couldn't trust their politicians anymore. And people actually being very active mentally and emotionally engaged in what was happening in their political scene.
As far as the candidates go, it was kind of a three-way race between the Greens, the Liberals, and the Conservatives. The NDP did have a candidate, but they didn't have as much backing as you would see in other provinces. So also, again, with the context to add to what Andrea was saying, the by-election was called quickly. It wasn't something that we had months and months to prepare for, but they managed to get a candidate forward for the Green Party within just a few days, and then
That's amazing.
then ran a campaign. So the lucky thing is that this was the only election around. There wasn't like a provincial general election. It was just one seat in one riding. So we had people from, ourselves coming from Manitoba and other people coming from other provinces to help as well, including Elizabeth May.
And could you describe your comment on Hannah Bell's campaign and why it was so successful? I think you might have hinted at the reason already, but
I think there were a number of factors. On the side of the Green Party, there's of course the popularity of Peter Bevan Baker, who, and this was something that people wanted to see more of the style of. I think that also included in that was that of all the different candidates who were running, the Green Party had the strongest candidate by far. Some of the other parties, because they were more established, there was a bit more complacency, and the people could feel this in terms of how the other campaigns were being run. And the other third thing that I think really impacted the campaign was that it was very solution oriented. So it wasn't just a lot of the same old rhetoric, but it was actually about putting forward real ideas, real solutions, real vision for what people wanted in Charlottetown-Parkdale. So, and then again, like Dave said, the team hit the ground running. So they put all their effort into it. There was no complacency. They had their ducks in a row, and they really put their best candidate forward and really worked hard to make her shine.
Hannah Bell had been up until the point she got elected. I think she was the director of the PEI Business Women's Association. So she had been working in the community. She had been well known. She's a single mom who also lives with her mom. So it's sort of an intergenerational family in her household, and that's another aspect of the PEI Greens. They actually really work towards getting women into politics and taking care of their needs, but we can talk about that after. But Hannah was really well spoken. I met her on the campaign. I didn't know about her before, and she had just won the nomination just a few days before, so it was all new to her too. So I went door to door with her and got to know her a little bit. And it was an interesting juxtaposition. I had been a candidate before, so my focus was just going door to door and doing those things candidates just are able to do. And then I got to step back and offer help to other candidates and sort of see, oh, that's something we do similarly, and oh, that's something that's different. So it was really interesting to see her in action. And then, of course, I got to spend election night with her core team watching the results come in, which gave me flashbacks to my campaign, of course.
For sure.
But I could offer a little bit of help, perhaps, to her nerves. But lucky her, she got to know the results in a couple hours. Mine took overnight.
And she won by quite a majority, didn't she? Like, her numbers were quite a bit higher than the other.
It was a three-way race, and she got 35.4%, which was, funny enough, same as my result. But it was a three-way race, so she pulled ahead by about, in the riding, they're fairly small, by about 129 votes, I think she won by. but in a riding that's 3,400 votes with 60% turnout, that's actually quite a lot. So probably won by about 4 or 5%, I think, is the final result.
And the context, of course, being that with strong party loyalty, that was huge, that a lot of people were turning their backs on the parties that they've held memberships for, often intergenerationally, in order to try something different. And a big core message in the campaign that Hannah kept saying was, be brave, vote for what you want, as opposed to just the same old, same old. And the other thing that struck me about Hannah is that, and both Peter Bevan Baker as well, is that they're both really good listeners. So some of the other campaigns were putting out rhetoric that I remember Hannah commenting, no one in the riding was talking about. So why were these being made key points in the other parties' campaigns? She actually went to almost every door in the entire riding during that 1 month period. And she actually talked to and listened to everyone. And it was really amazing to see her in action doing that. And she did an amazing job, and it really impressed people.
You're listening to CKUW 95.9 FM, aired from the University of Winnipeg, and we're talking to Andrea Shalay.
Do you have a comment, Kristen?
I just wanted to take a moment to welcome my fellow Green Party members. Mary Jane, I don't know if you know, but I ran 2 different campaigns as a Green Party candidate myself in downtown Winnipeg, so in Point Douglas and in the Centennial Central neighborhood. So as a business owner and a resident in downtown, I felt, the Green Party, I mean, they're really, they sort of held the only alternative voice and the only sensible voice, for a lot of the different issues that were coming up, especially at a provincial level. It's kind of the only way we can really hope to affect change is by bringing those alternative voices here. So I'm happy to welcome the 2 of you and yeah, look into Green Party locally here. It's actually I think we have a chance to have a Green Party representative in Manitoba, Wolseley particularly. I mean, I know we're talking a little bit about the federal election, but I don't think Manitobans should shy away from considering this as a really viable option.
We've also seen 2 provinces jump in their Green Party support. So PEI, one of the polls had the Green Party leading, not just in a riding, but in the province in terms of who people would vote for. So leaning undecided voters, it was at one point more than the governing party. And that's, again, not just an individual, that's the party. And in BC right now, they're polling at 27% in the province, which is huge third-party numbers. Those are this isn't like, oh, if we can just get one person. No, it's not about getting one person anymore. We've got 3 in BC, we've got 2 in PEI, and we're really aiming to get more in the federal government as well. So I think the days of us being sort of like the underdog and the protest vote are really over. And watching the culture in PEI when we volunteered there was just amazing. We were taken very seriously because they already had 1 member in, and that showed up at the door. You could see it in people. They weren't just like, oh yeah, I'd vote for you, but you're not going to win, so it's just kind of a throwaway vote. There's no more talk of that anymore. We're really beyond that.
Yeah, the thing that struck me, and I guess this might lead to the next question, but I think right now the Green Party has strong proof of being able to make waves in government, to actually have influence. In BC, in many ways, they have the deciding vote, and they are using that to really shape and develop many of the policies that are coming out of BC. And in PEI, Peter Bevan Baker has already proven through his conduct in their legislative assembly that he can raise the bar of how politics are done, that it is more civil, more democratic, and really adhering to parliamentary procedure.
What is the election? Do you want to tell us what the election platform was for all the 3 parties? If you recall that?
I remember speaking of NDP, I remember the NDP candidate was actually the leader of the party trying to get a seat. The thing is, in PEI, the Green Party made history by electing the first third-party caucus, so electing more than 1 member from a third party. So the NDP is kind of like the PCs in BC. They don't have a lot of strength. But they said put the leader in the House. We saw that there was a lot of signs in the ground everywhere from the NDP signs saying put the leader in the House. That was their message. The Liberal Party message was probably just more stay the course. We didn't really focus on their campaign as much. We just focused on getting Hannah Bell in, and then there was also a PC candidate. And they, the Liberals are in power there. So I guess the PC candidate was like going after the Liberal policy and saying we can do better. So Liberals stay the course, PC we can do better, NDP put the leader in the House is the summary.
And to put it back into the context that most people across the province are multi-generational members of the Conservative or Liberal Party. And so there's a very large sense of complacency between those two parties that, it's sort of like it's either going to be one or the other. There was not really so much strong platforms as just this general assumption that if they had card-holding members, those members would vote for them. And a lot of their campaigns were kind of based around that. And that's why it was so fascinating talking to people on the street and canvassing and hearing their stories and learning from them that they weren't going to be complacent anymore. As one person said, and it actually shocked me, and just in terms of how forward it was, but they said, we need to stop feeding the pigs at the trough. And that really struck me, that they, the people of this riding were tired of complacency between the two main parties. They were tired of the corruption that they were fully aware went on in these parties, just assuming that they would get seats, so they didn't really work for the votes that they were getting, and they felt very betrayed by how the plebiscite was handled, and so they chose something different. So it was much of the campaign was even less focused around, from my perspective, real platforms and more about let's get out of this same old mentality and really hold our government to account by really putting forward something different.
There was a plebiscite on electoral reform in PEI, just like the federal Liberals, the provincial Liberals in PEI just jettisoned the whole thing. They just said, no, we don't want anything to do with this, even though something like 65% of people in PEI said they wanted some sort of proportional representation in that plebiscite. And we don't own that issue, but Greens are very strong on electoral reform, and I think that helped us a lot too. The governing Liberals, just like the federal Liberals, I'm not going to speak. I'm going to speak plainly. They betrayed us on electoral reform, and that happened on a smaller scale in PEI. So that helped, and that could also be a little bit of an indicator of what happens federally as well. But of course, we're going to continue to push for that here in Manitoba and federally too. But that was a huge issue in PEI. People were very upset that they were like, oh, we want to vote for this. There was a great turnout, a great result. And then they went, and then they threw it aside.
This election is a bit of a cautionary tale, I believe, for what is yet to come, because complacency is one of the things that the mainstream parties can fall into very easily, and they do. So this is a hopeful sign. What is the significance of this election win for Hannah Bell?
I think that I would shy away from the word cautionary and think of more celebratory. Here were the people of Charlottetown-Parkdale who had decided that they were going to take their democracy back. And this, in terms of significance, I think that this is evident. You can see across the country that there's this growing trend of both in demographics and in the shift of values, that people want politics to be done differently. They want their politics to be civil and democratic. They want their politics to be nonpartisan. They want to be solution-oriented and more bottom-up, rather than the traditional top-down structures where you can have a premier unilaterally decide for the entire province whether to just ignore a plebiscite. And you see this as a shift in demographics. So Green Party has always had a very strong support with people under 40 in terms of the values just really line up. But I found that in going canvassing in PEI, it was actually the baby boomers who were really being very vocal that they wanted something different. And that for me is a huge shift in terms of, where is the social acceptability of supporting green, and it's actually crossing all demographics now. It's also crossing all geographies, as we have, both ends of the country now with evidence that there is strong green support.
The country is bookmarked, so to speak.
Bookended, maybe? Yeah.
And I think the big thing too, the really big thing out of Annabelle's campaign is the willingness of people being brave, being able to, willing to vote for what they want, as opposed to the long-standing political culture that Canadians have of trying to vote for the lesser of two evils. This is more positive. This is more about, let's have a vision for what we want Canada or PEI or BC or Manitoba to be moving forward.
Kristen, as a candidate yourself, maybe you would like to share notes on your experiences and and related to the Charlottetown situation. I know there's totally two different provinces, different sizes and so on, but
just to speak, to I guess my own experience here in Winnipeg. I mean, I found going door to door that Winnipeggers were. I love what you were saying about people wanting to take their democracy back. I think people here had, become very disillusioned with what their vote could mean. And I heard that from a lot of people. They're like, well, this doesn't matter. My vote isn't going to mean anything. And I think, if the Green Party can accomplish one thing, getting people interested in the power of their vote again, I mean, that's huge. And that was really a large part of why I felt motivated to run in downtown, to run, for an area of Winnipeg that has got this, incredible diversity, like within the area where I live, which is, let's just call it the central area. I know they sometimes change boundaries for elections and that sort of thing. I mean, we have some of the, the highest income earners in Winnipeg with the area around waterfront and the condo developments there, but we also have some of the lowest income earners and all of our soup kitchens and a huge diversity of people new to Winnipeg and new to Canada. So it's really, it was an exciting place to run. I met so many fantastic people, and it was really interesting. Some people who come from, countries where their life may have been threatened to vote, but yet they still went out and voted. They knew the importance of that vote. And so many of our Canadians here are people who've grown up kind of, watching their parents' brand of politics or their grandparents' brand of politics. The Green Party, it's this viable option of like, wow, they're talking about stuff that I can relate to. They're talking about stuff that actually really matters. And, I hope that Winnipeggers, really take that more seriously with, the next coming elections. The power of the vote is huge, and when people gather around that, yeah, we can have our democracy back. We can have proportional representation. We can have, environment, food, education, those things that really matter at the forefront. And that's really what governing a country and living well is all about. And that's kind of the point of our program, isn't it, Mary Jane? It's like it's about living well. It's about good living, and sometimes that involves the work of politics.
That's an excellent commentary, Kristen. And anyway, maybe we could wrap up, and you could maybe just say what were the highlights of the campaign that you observed, and what were maybe some of the factors in the success of it. I think you've touched on that already. And what did you learn from this experience, and what can you take back that could apply to the Manitoba situation for the Greens?
The best thing for me was being there on election night and watching the results come in the office with the core team, and the nervousness, of course, of the candidate just losing it almost, just watching the results come in, but being part of a winning campaign. And I know in the Green Party that's kind of a unicorn right now, but I was really happy to have Andrea there, and happy she took the time to volunteer, because it took me, I joined the Green Party in 1999 as a candidate for the first provincial run, and it took me 18 years to be part of a winning campaign. My friend here, I'm not jealous or anything, but she had joined the party just recently and then got to be part of a winning campaign. So I'm really happy that just has a value beyond anything you can imagine. Being part of that winning in the room when you win, coming to the election celebration, and having Hannibel's daughter and Hannibel's mom there, and just the feeling in the room, I can't describe. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to be a part of, and we're going to take that energy back here to Manitoba, to Andrea's campaign, and of course to mine later on.
And that nervousness is testament that we are actually real people. We're not anything necessarily special, except we're willing to just step forward. And I think I can speak for both of us, that's the core of democracy, that willingness to just be a part of the process. For me, what I feel truly inspired about in the campaign is the people. I was very inspired by the people of PEI, that they were so brave to step out of their comfort zone, out of their normal way of doing things, and breaking with tradition in order to vote for what they wanted. And it gives me hope that others will be as brave in upcoming elections. The other thing that was truly inspiring was the people that made up the team. I would look around every day and see so many intelligent, capable, passionate leaders that were making a difference. And now that they're proven by having two candidates in office, I feel like we can expect a lot more great things from this growing green generation of strong candidates and strong team and support.